Welcome back, dear listeners, to another spine-chilling episode of our haunted storytelling series. Tonight, we dive headfirst into the realm of true horror, real-life stories that defy explanation, terrify those who experience them, and leave even the most skeptical minds questioning what lurks in the shadows of our world. While fiction can be frightening, there's something uniquely unsettling about real events. Stories that didn't come from a writer's imagination but instead unfolded in the lives of ordinary people who suddenly found themselves entangled in the inexplicable. In this episode, we bring you 3 truly terrifying true horror stories, accounts of paranormal encounters, unexplained disappearances, and chilling brushes with the unknown. These are not just ghost stories. They are testimonies from individuals who lived through experiences so bizarre, so disturbing, that they remain etched in their memories forever. Some of these tales involve haunted houses where malevolent presences made life unbearable for those who dared to stay. Others recount eerie encounters with entities that defied logic, leaving victims shaken and searching for answers. And then there are the chilling mysteries, events that no one could explain, no matter how hard they tried. What makes these stories so compelling is not just their supernatural elements, but the fact that they happen to real people. People like you and me, going about their daily lives until something unimaginable turned their world upside down. Whether it was a whisper in the dark, a shadow moving where no one should be, or an entire night lost to something beyond comprehension, each of these accounts serves as a reminder that the line between reality and the unknown is thinner than we'd like to believe. So, if you're ready to step into the darkness with us, settle in, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for 3 of the most bone-chilling true horror stories ever told. Because sometimes, the scariest things aren't make-believe, they're real. The power of true horror stories. There is something inherently gripping about true horror stories. The way they tap into our deepest fears, challenge our understanding of reality, and force us to confront the possibility that the unknown is closer than we think. Unlike fictional horror, which allows for suspension of disbelief, real-life terrifying events carry a weight that fiction cannot replicate. When someone recounts a personal experience of waking up paralyzed in the dead of night while feeling an unseen presence watching them, or when a family claims their home has been invaded by an entity that refuses to let them go, the authenticity of these accounts sends chills down the spine in a way that scripted horror simply cannot match. One of the reasons true horror stories resonate so deeply with audiences is their ability to blur the line between the mundane and the supernatural. These are not tales set in distant lands or fantastical realms. They are grounded in reality, often occurring in places we consider safe: homes, schools, hospitals, and even quiet neighborhoods. A child vanishing without a trace on a seemingly normal afternoon, a woman encountering a spectral figure in her own bedroom, or a group of friends experiencing an unspeakable terror during a camping trip. All of these scenarios feel uncomfortably close to our own lives. This proximity makes the fear more visceral, more immediate. It forces us to ask ourselves, could this happen to me? Additionally, true horror stories serve as a reflection of our collective anxieties. They expose the fragility of human existence, reminding us that despite all our technological advancements and scientific knowledge, there are still forces at work in the world that we do not fully understand. The concept of an unseen presence lurking in the darkness, an inexplicable disappearance, or an encounter with something beyond human comprehension taps into primal fears that have existed for centuries. These stories remind us that, no matter how much we think we know, there will always be mysteries that elude us, secrets hidden in the fabric of reality that refuse to be explained. Beyond the fear factor, true horror stories also hold a unique power in their storytelling. They are often shared by survivors, witnesses, or investigators who were directly involved, adding an emotional depth that heightens the impact. Listening to someone describe the moment they felt ice-cold hands grip their throat in an empty room or recount the eerie silence that fell over a house before something unthinkable occurred creates a sense of immersion that few other forms of storytelling can achieve. These narratives are not just about what happened, they are about how it felt, how it changed those who experienced it, and why it continues to haunt them long after the event itself. Furthermore, the rise of podcasts, YouTube channels, and online forums dedicated to true crime, paranormal investigations, and mysterious disappearances has only amplified the popularity of these stories. With each new account shared, debated, and analyzed, the intrigue surrounding true horror deepens. Listeners and viewers become amateur sleuths, piecing together clues, offering theories, and attempting to make sense of the senseless. In many ways, these stories foster a sense of community among those who are drawn to the unknown, uniting people in their shared fascination with the darker aspects of human experience. Ultimately, true horror stories endure because they speak to something fundamental within us: the desire to understand the inexplicable, the need to face our fears, and the thrill of stepping into the unknown. Whether they end in tragedy, mystery, or unresolved questions, these accounts continue to captivate and unsettle, proving that the most terrifying stories are often the ones that really happened. The house that should have been empty in the quiet town of Hopewell, Virginia. A family of 4 eagerly moved into a newly purchased home, excited to begin a fresh chapter in their lives. The house, a modest 2-story colonial-style residence built in the early 1980s, had been on the market for months due to a string of failed sales, something the family attributed to a sluggish housing market rather than anything more sinister. For the first few weeks, everything seemed normal. They settled into their new routine, unpacked boxes, and enjoyed the peace and quiet of their neighborhood. But soon, subtle signs of something wrong began to emerge. It started subtly. At first, they noticed strange sounds, soft thumps coming from the attic late at night, even though the space was completely empty. Then came the sensation of being watched. Emily described feeling eyes on her while she cooked in the kitchen, yet whenever she turned around, no one was there. The feeling intensified in the upstairs hallway, where both she and Daniel claimed to hear footsteps pacing back and forth, even though they were alone in the house. One evening, Daniel decided to investigate the sound himself. Armed with a flashlight, he climbed the stairs and slowly approached the hallway. As he reached the top step, the sound abruptly stopped. He stood in complete silence for several moments, his heart pounding, before hearing a faint whisper just behind him. When he spun around, there was nothing, only the empty corridor stretching before him. Then came the nightmares. Both Emily and Daniel began experiencing vivid, recurring dreams of a tall, shadowy figure standing at the foot of their bed. The entity never spoke, never moved, it simply watched. Sometimes, it wore a tattered black cloak, other times, it appeared as a shifting mass of darkness, its form barely distinguishable against the dim light of the bedroom. What terrified them most was the overwhelming sense of dread that accompanied these dreams. They would wake up gasping for air, drenched in sweat, unable to shake the feeling that something had been in the room with them. Determined to find an explanation, they reached out to local paranormal investigators, who conducted a full-night investigation of the house. The team placed cameras, EMF detectors, and audio recorders throughout the property, hoping to capture any evidence of supernatural activity. What they recorded left them stunned. Multiple cameras caught fleeting glimpses of a dark, humanoid figure lingering in the hallway and near the base of the staircase. The EMF readings spiked dramatically in the same areas where Emily and Daniel had reported feeling the strongest presence. Most chilling of all, the audio recordings captured what sounded like a voice whispering in an unknown language, repeating the same phrase over and over again. When played backward, some believed the words formed a message, though none could decipher its meaning. Despite the overwhelming evidence, neither Emily nor Daniel could tolerate staying in the house any longer. They packed their belongings and moved out, refusing to return. Years later, the house remains abandoned, its windows boarded up and weeds overtaking the once manicured lawn. Locals avoid the area, claiming that strange figures can still be seen inside on foggy nights. Some say that if you stand too close to the front porch, you can hear whispers echoing from within, an eerie reminder that whatever resided in that house may not have left with its former occupants. The night that shouldn't have existed, it was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, a chance for 3 college friends, Alex, Jordan, and Marcus, to escape the pressures of school and enjoy a relaxing camping trip in the dense forests of northern Pennsylvania. They chose a secluded spot deep in the Allegheny National Forest, far from civilization, where the only sounds would be the rustling of leaves and the crackling of their campfire. Armed with tents, sleeping bags, and plenty of snacks, they set up camp just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the forest into a thick blanket of darkness. For the first few hours, everything was as expected. They roasted marshmallows, shared ghost stories, and laughed about past misadventures. But as midnight approached, the atmosphere shifted. The wind grew eerily still, and an unnatural silence settled over the woods. Then, without warning, the fire flickered violently before extinguishing entirely, plunging them into complete darkness. Alex, who had been sitting closest to the flames, swore he saw a pair of glowing red eyes staring at him from just beyond the tree line, watching, unmoving. Before he could say anything, Jordan let out a startled gasp. "I just heard my name," she whispered, her voice trembling. They all froze, listening intently. Nothing. Not even the chirping of insects. Just the oppressive silence of the forest pressing in around them. Marcus, trying to lighten the mood, joked that they were probably just hearing things. But then it happened again. This time, all three of them heard it. A low, guttural voice, speaking just loud enough for them to catch their names. One by one, panic set in. They scrambled to pack up their gear, desperate to leave the clearing as quickly as possible. But as they gathered their belongings, they realized something was terribly wrong. Their path back had vanished. The trail they had walked just hours earlier was now blocked by thick undergrowth, as if it had never existed. Their phones, which had worked fine earlier in the day, were now completely dead. Every direction they turned looked identical, the towering trees forming an endless maze. And then came the laughter. It was soft at first, almost playful, but it carried an unsettling tone that sent chills down their spines. It echoed through the trees, growing louder with each passing second. Suddenly, the darkness around them pulsed, shadows stretching unnaturally across the ground, shifting and twisting as if alive. Shapes began to move between the trees, indistinct at first, but gradually taking on humanoid forms. They didn't walk, they glided, their feet never touching the ground. Alex, overwhelmed by sheer terror, sprinted forward, determined to break through whatever barrier had closed around them. Jordan and Marcus followed closely behind, their breath coming in ragged gasps. But no matter how far they ran, they never seemed to get anywhere. Trees blurred past them in an endless loop, and the laughter never stopped. Time itself felt warped, as if minutes stretched into hours, yet nothing changed. At some point, they collapsed from exhaustion. When they opened their eyes, the forest was silent once more. The shapes were gone. The laughter had faded. It was dawn, and they were lying on the very same patch of earth where they had pitched their tents the night before. Their gear was untouched, as if nothing had happened. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints in the dirt, no indication that they had run for hours. But something had changed. None of them could remember exactly what had occurred in the depths of the night, only that they had been trapped in a place that should not have existed. And worst of all, they couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had watched them from the shadows had allowed them to leave, for now. The curse of the abandoned hospital deep in the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan, stands a crumbling relic of medical history, the old Wayne General Hospital. Once a bustling center for healthcare, the hospital was shut down in the late 1990s due to financial struggles and deteriorating infrastructure. For years, it remained abandoned, its shattered windows and decaying hallways becoming a magnet for urban explorers, thrill-seekers, and paranormal investigators. But those who dared to enter often left with more than just photographs. They left with stories of a place that seemed to resist being forgotten, a place where something lingered long after the last patient had departed. Among the most harrowing accounts to emerge from Old Wayne General Hospital is the story of Tina Langley, a freelance journalist who ventured inside in 2015 to document the eerie remnants of the once grand facility. Accompanied by a small crew of fellow explorers, Tina had planned to film a short documentary about the hospital's history and its reputation for paranormal activity. Equipped with cameras, audio recorders, and flashlights, they entered through a broken side door, stepping into a world frozen in time. Dust-coated gurneys lined the halls, rusted floor poles leaned precariously against cracked walls, and faded patient charts fluttered in the breeze from broken windows. At first, the footage showed little more than the expected decay of an abandoned building. But as they moved deeper into the hospital, strange occurrences began to unfold. Tina's camera picked up sudden fluctuations in lighting, bright flashes illuminating corridors that had previously been pitch black, even though no external light source was present. The audio recorders captured faint murmurs in the distance, voices speaking in overlapping tones, though no one else was in the building. Then, as they reached the fourth floor, the strangest phenomenon of all began. Tina and her team reported hearing the distinct sound of a child laughing, clear and unmistakable, bouncing off the tiled walls of the empty pediatric ward. Thinking it might be an echo or a trick of the acoustics, they paused to listen. The laughter continued, growing louder, more erratic. Then, without warning, it stopped. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. Moments later, a voice, deep, guttural, and undeniably male, whispered directly into Tina's earpiece. "Get out!" Startled, Tina removed the earpiece, only to realize that the others hadn't heard the voice. They assured her it wasn't part of their setup. Confused and shaken, she insisted they leave immediately. As they hurried toward the exit, they encountered something they couldn't explain. Their path back had changed. Hallways they had passed through minutes ago were now blocked by fallen debris, staircases led nowhere, and doors that had been open were now sealed shut. Panic set in as they struggled to retrace their steps, their flashlights flickering ominously in the darkness. Eventually, they managed to find their way out, though none of them could recall the exact route they had taken. Back in their vehicle, they reviewed the footage and listened to the audio recordings. What they found chilled them to the core. Among the static-filled background noise, a voice could be clearly heard whispering the same phrase over and over again. "Don't come back." Even more disturbing was a segment of video showing a figure standing at the end of a hallway, one of the nurses' stations, where no one had been when they filmed. The figure, obscured by shadows, appeared to be wearing an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, its head tilted slightly to the side, as if watching them. Since that night, Tina has refused to speak publicly about what she experienced inside Old Wayne General Hospital. She deleted the footage, destroyed the audio recordings, and has never returned to the location. Others who have explored the hospital since have reported similar phenomena, voices calling out from empty rooms, visions of apparitions in surgical gowns, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Some claim that the spirits of former patients and staff still wander the halls, trapped in a cycle of suffering and regret. Others believe the hospital is cursed, a place where the pain and trauma of decades past have imprinted onto the very walls, creating an energy that refuses to fade. Whether the truth lies in the supernatural or in the psychological effects of exploring a place steeped in sorrow and abandonment, one thing remains certain: Old Wayne General Hospital is not just a ruin of the past. It is a place where the echoes of history refuse to be silenced, where something waits in the shadows, watching, whispering, and remembering every soul that dares to enter. As we bring this episode to a close, one thing becomes abundantly clear: true horror stories are more than just chilling tales meant to send shivers down the spine. They are testaments to the inexplicable, reminders that there are forces in this world that defy logic, science, and reason. From the relentless presence haunting a suburban home to the terrifying disappearance of a young woman into the unknown, each of these stories carries with it a lingering sense of unease, a whisper of something beyond our understanding. What makes these accounts so unsettling is not just their content, but the fact that they happen to real people, individuals who went about their lives expecting nothing out of the ordinary, only to find themselves caught in situations that shook them to their core. Whether it was the feeling of being watched, the sound of footsteps in an empty hallway, or the chill that runs down your spine in a long-abandoned building, these experiences tap into something primal within us, the awareness that there are mysteries in this world that we may never unravel. And yet, despite the fear they invoke, we return to these stories again and again. We explore them, analyze them, and share them, ensuring that they do not fade into obscurity. Whether we are searching for answers, chasing adrenaline, or simply honoring the lives that once filled these spaces, there is something undeniably powerful about stepping into the unknown. The line between the living and the dead is not always clear, and sometimes, the most chilling truths are the ones that hide in plain sight. So, if you ever find yourself in one of these places, take a moment to listen, not just for the sounds of the past, but for the stories embedded in the very fabric of the land. Because even in silence, these locations speak volumes, carrying the voices of history forward, waiting for someone willing to hear them. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the unknown. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another spine-chilling story. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some of the most terrifying things in this world are the ones that actually happened.